So I just wanted to take everybody through an exercise using Modelbuilder, which we don't really talk about in the intro class. Definitely something that you get into if you take other advanced GIS classes and think about automating or scripting any analyses that you're going to do. We are back to working with the dead bird data once again. So I've got GIS open, and here are my 3 layers from my dead bird open in here. So what we're going to do first is open Modelbuilder, which is this little icon up here with the little green and blue boxes. And that'll open this kind of like blank window that's just like, here's the start of where we're going to put this model. Anytime you want to save a model, which we probably want to do, the one thing that you need to be able to do is to save it into a toolbox. So you have to actually have a toolbox that exists. You can call it toolbox, whatever you want, and then you can save the model into that toolbox, and that way when I save this, it'll still exist, and I'd be able to edit it, open it, and edit it again, and work with it again. All right, so there's nothing in here right now. The nice thing about Modelbuilder, just like GIS, is that most things are just kind of draggable, so you can grab a data layer and bring it in here, grab all of these 3 things that we're going to need. And now Modelbuilder is reading them as the shape files where they're located. So back to just the dead bird criteria for a second. If you remember back to lab 3, the criteria were that we want to identify all of the areas that are within 2 kilometers of the dead bird, that we're able to spray within 50 meters of a road, and that we're not allowed to spray within 100 meters of a wetland. So where we want to start with all of those is with buffers, right? Because we know we need to create this new shape of 2 kilometers from the dead bird, 50 meters from a road, and 100 meters from a wetland before we can take the next steps. Now you guys know that buffers are up here in geoprocessing as a shortcut, but Modelbuilder and the shortcuts don't really work too well together, so you actually have to type in buffer, find the buffer analysis tool in here, and drag it in. And we'll actually need 3 buffers, so I'm going to drag in 3 buffers, right? Because we've got to do a buffer for each one of these 3 things. Now you can go into any of these individual tools. If I double click on it, it's just going to bring me the buffer tool that that I remember from the dead bird lab. And I can from here choose the input feature that I want, and etc. All of these other things. A shortcut to this though is if I want to make my dead bird my input to the buffer, I can use this little connect tool. So if I click on that, it brings up a little wand, and then I click and drag to bring the pointer over so that my dead bird is the input of this, my roads is going into this other buffer, and wetlands is going into that buffer. And if I go back to my arrow tool, the nice thing is now this will have filled in for me the name of the input feature and an output location for that. So dead bird is 2 kilometers, so 2,000 meters. That one, the rest of this should be fine. I just leave it as is. Once it becomes a color in here, then everything in GIS land is set up and active and kind of ready to go. The roads was 50 meters from a road. One other thing that I want to remember is to set this dissolve type to all so that I just get a single shape rather than, a polygon around every individual road segment. And we'll do the same thing for, this was 100 meters, and I can do a dissolve all on that too. Okay, so now I've got my 3 things. If I want to neaten them up a little, I can do that, and then they'll be nicely aligned and kind of perfect here. you'll notice that I just kind of ignored the fact that the output on these is going into a temp directory into my default geodatabase, because really I only care about the final output. And one of the nice things about running things through Modelbuilder is that it will overwrite, which can be problematic sometimes working generally in GIS. You know, if you execute some of these tools in GIS, it doesn't like you to be able to overwrite these things. All right, so let's start with the dead bird and the roads. So remember that we want the area that is within 2 kilometers from a dead bird and is within 50 meters of a road. So that's the overlap between these two things. So an overlap tool, right, is the clip. It's a little dark in here. I can't actually see my keys. Clip. Clip analysis tool is the one that we want. And I can use my little connect thing again, because if I go into clip directly, these so the dead bird buffer things, you know, like I can also click down here as to what the input and the road buffer, or I can use my little magic wand and connect these up. In terms of the input versus the clip features, remember that the input features are the ones whose attribute table we're going to retain. In this case, we don't have much of an attribute table in either, so we actually don't really care which is the input and which is the clip features. So this is going to automatically populate those things for me and send out something called roads buffer clip, which I could change the name of this, and I probably should, but I'm just going to leave it for now. So here's my overlap between my dead bird and my roads polygon. And then the next thing that I need to do is take away from this, right? Because this is the area that I would ideally want to spray and be able to spray. And so I want to take away from that this area that I'm not allowed to spray, right? And so that is the erase tool. Start with this, erase that from it, my analysis tool. And again, I can use my little magic wand and say that this is my input feature, and then this is the thing I'm going to erase from it. And I can, this is just because I remember this tool, but remember that there's the kind of little help menu. If you go to the help menu over here, the input is the road, so that's the area that I would ideally like to spray, and I'm taking away from that this wetlands, this area that I'm not allowed to spray. Okay, so this now, I'm going to neaten this whole thing up a little bit. This piece is my final product, right? So I would like to name this, let's see, dead bird spray suitability, right? I want to name that something that I'm going to remember later on, and I can save this model. Okay, so now I can set the model to run, which is, go ahead. I mean, I can also validate it, but as long as it's in color, generally, that's pretty good. All right, so I'm going to run the model. And that was very exciting. The model just completed. You notice that nothing actually happened in my table of contents because all of these layers that I've created were going into my default geodatabase. So if I go over to my default geodatabase, I should be able to open this and find a bunch of temporary stuff that I had created, including dead bird spray suitability. So I'm going to bring that over so that we can actually look at it. And this shape might look familiar to you because you remember creating something like that from Lab 3. In your case, right, you know, you can do all of these steps individually in geoprocessing. The model builder is just, oops, where did my model go? There it is, a faster way to do it. Okay, so I'm going to now just show you why Model Builder is kind of great, right? So one thing is this model is saved, so I can always open it up again later on. But let's say, for example, someone says, hey, I got a better sprayer. Now my sprayer can actually reach rather than being 50 meters away from a road, it can actually reach to 75 meters away from a road, right? So I want you to redo this analysis and double check, what the total spray area would be. So I'm going to do 75 meters from a road in this one, just so that we have another version of it. And then we run it and we wait for a minute. Okay, so that just finished. And so I'm going to find my dead bird suitability from 75 meters away from a road. And you can see now I'm getting further out from a road, but all my other criteria are basically the same. And so that was just a really fast way to rerun the analysis, to go back and double check that your analysis was correct to begin with. And if you wanted to change any criteria in there, voila, here it is. If I want to, figure out what the area is, now I've got area in here, or I can always, add a field and call it area in square kilometers so that I'm sure, oops, I made that a short integer. Just kidding. Too fast. All right, so I can add area and calculate it myself in square kilometers. And this isn't square meters, so that's a bit larger, right, than the original one that you guys calculated, because now we're going 75 meters away from a road. So that's a quick intro to Modelbuilder. Try loading one up yourself. There is a little tutorial to more complex than this, but Modelbuilder stuff. And basically the idea is, you can now, using Modelbuilder, you can create sort of paths to do multi-step analysis and then run the whole thing again quickly and be pretty sure you know exactly what you did. So thanks.